Hello and welcome to a weekly update, your weekly update, the weekly update, a new weekly update. I hope you're doing well. I hope you've had a good weekend. Yes, things are starting to heat up again in the Microsoft world, the Microsoft Dev world, 365 Dev world. And a couple of things to talk about this week, so let's dive straight into it. The first, a blog post titled Exciting Updates Coming to the Microsoft 365 Developer Program. So if you have been doing this stuff for more than a couple of years, you'll know about the Microsoft 365 Developer Program. What it was is the ability for a developer to get a test tenant to try things out on and be able to sort of do dev on and not production stuff. But it was a really low bar to entry, a very nice way to get on board with the program. It's not been available for a while. It is coming back. And I think there's a bunch of updates that are rolling out and a couple of changes. Are they exciting? You can be the judge of that. Let's have a look at what they are. So a couple of things. So there's some streamlining around tenant provisioning. For qualified members, I'm going to come back to that in a minute. Support for commercial add-ons, the ability to sort of purchase commercial add-ons such as Copilot licenses. That's been a real problem with the dev tenants because it was all kind of free. You couldn't really add anything on commercially if you wanted to. So Copilot is the obvious example here where you need Copilot licenses to do some things and to try some things out and to do some testing. It sounds like you're going to be able to do that now, which is really good. So that's great. And then I really like this bottom one, the option to transition to a paid subscription. So you start off with a dev tenant and you want to just take that entire tenant and everything in it and convert it into a paid production tenant. You're going to be able to do that. Let's come back a little bit to streamlined tenant provisioning and the ability for an improved tenant provisioning flow is introduced as the default for all new Microsoft 365 Developer Program qualified members. So what is qualified members? So this leads to an FAQ page that says who qualifies for a Microsoft 365 E5 developer subscription. So I'm not quite sure about this. There's a bunch of different things. So you can have one Microsoft 365 developer program account associated with your phone number. Okay, so they're going to tie dev accounts to phone numbers, right? And then if you want to, you can set up a Microsoft 365 E5 developer subscription. So only to be used for application development or designed to be used for application development. And you need to be a qualified member. So that means you need to have a Visual Studio subscription by the look of it, with a professional or enterprise subscription qualification, or you need to be a partner, essentially. There's a whole set of bullet points for what qualifies there. And I think this is kind of Microsoft putting some gates and some checks and balances around the commercial model, around the paid for, the enterprise, the E5 type subscription. I think this means that you can still sign up to the developer program for free, and it's open to everybody. I think it's just that the E5, if you want an E5 subscription with 25 user licenses, that you need to be a qualified member for. Okay. So that might be a problem for you if you're a very small ISV or an indie developer. If you're an ISV, you probably ought to be a partner. And then therefore, I think you're probably all right. But if you're an individual or hobbyist, something like that, you might not be a partner. You might have. It's worth looking into the partner thing. The Microsoft, have a look at the partner sort of benefits that you get for being a partner. Definitely worth looking into. This might be one that swings it for some people though as well. So quite a lot to go through in that blog post, quite a lot to digest, but just know that that is changing. They've got more changes coming as well. And they plan to do another one of these blog posts in September with the next wave of changes. And so it's coming. Things are changing in the Microsoft 365 developer program. So this is kind of good to see. All right. Also coming is the Microsoft Graph API usage report. So good blog post by Jeremy Kelly here, talking about the usage reporting API. So this is an API, new API, as you know, within Microsoft Graph, which will allow admins to report on the usage of Microsoft Graph within their tenant. So this can be useful, especially for bigger tenants. If you start hitting throttling problems, you're not quite sure, because a lot of the throttling is done by per application, but some of it is done at the tenant level. So actually understanding what applications are doing what across the tenant can be really valuable. They're going to initially focus on Microsoft Exchange and Teams workloads. Sorry, you should see this as well. So there's a whole blog post about it, introducing the Microsoft Graph API usage report. These are the areas they're going to focus on initially. It's Exchange and it's Teams. They say they might add extra services over time. It's out on the beta endpoint, or it's coming out on the beta endpoint soon. There's a link to documentation. And yeah, so it's useful, I think, for admins to see what's going on. And then there's some links down here to optimizing, best practices, working with the graph, all the things that we always used to talk about that are still completely valid. I think this is really good. I think this is very useful for all sorts of things. It's useful for ISVs to understand how their applications work. It's useful for ISVs to understand how the applications they wrote in their tenant perform in other tenants, customer tenants that are often much bigger. And so that's very, very useful. I think it's useful for IT admins to understand this stuff as well, to understand what's happening inside their tenant. All good. So looking forward to using this. Yeah, I'm pleased that it's here. All right, moving on. Let's go to Azure Communication Services and continuing their series of different webinars around Azure Communication Services fundamentals. Last week, they did one all about WhatsApp, and now there's a blog post out for it that came out. Actually, I think it was the week before. But anyway, the blog post for it came out last week, all about getting started with WhatsApp messaging. So if you missed the webinar, this is a chance for you to catch up. There is actually a link to the full webinar. I'm just going to go down to the bottom for a second. There is a link to the full webinar, which is on YouTube here, so you can go and watch it. But if you just want to skim and see what it is you're going to be watching, this is a nicely laid out blog post that just kind of takes you through the steps that you need to do around creating a resource, trying using the sandbox, connecting a business account, a WhatsApp business account, inbound, outbound, pricing, ready to build, off you go, and then links to other things. So really, I like these style of blog posts actually that kind of just, I mean, I think there's probably a heavy bout of copilotness or AI in generating these blog posts, but I think they're quite useful actually as a way of summarizing what went on in the webinar. So I'm all for them. And if you weren't planning on watching the webinar, maybe have a skim of the blog post and it might change your mind. And then finally, I told you it was a big busy week. Finally, Jared Spataro has put his name to a new blog post on the Microsoft blog, the official Microsoft blog, which is the 2025 Annual Work Trend Index. And the subtitle is "The Frontier Firm is Born." So Microsoft have been putting out these annual work trend indexes for a while, become really, really relevant with regard to AI and generative AI and how that is shaping and changing the workforce and all that sort of stuff. They're continuing to push. Actually, I think they're continuing to kind of push on changes. This one is quite agentic, which is probably not a surprise if you're following what Microsoft have been doing right now. It's all about agents, and that kind of follows what the industry is doing as well in AI, all about agents. But they talk about this new kind of organization, which they call the Frontier Firm, built around intelligence on tap, human agent teams, and a new role for everyone, Agent Boss. Agent Boss sounds like I don't know. Yeah, sounds like a sort of first player game from like maybe the 2000s, something like that. Anyway, all right. So what are they talking about? They're talking about this kind of mix of humans and agents working together around humans managing teams of agents. There's some interesting things in here. There's a couple of sentences that made me think, oh, that's interesting for you to say. Like this one, much of that talent is flowing out to big tech and staying in the startup world. Like, sucks to be Microsoft right now. Interesting, right? I mean, this is their report. So I think all this stuff is always kind of interesting. Anyway, I'm going to stop talking because it's time for me to go. Have a great week, whatever it is you're doing, and I'll speak to you again next time.